By Monday morning, October 31st, many people who heard and believed the broadcast were up in arms that radio would be used to frighten and deceive the public. After all, this was where people went for news and information, and to present an entertainment program in the guise of a news broadcast was not only inappropriate, it was intentionally deceptive. Was Orson Welles guilty of inciting a panic? Or was he simply guilty of telling a story with such skill and in such a new manner that some people were bound to be misled? A tired and reticent Orson Welles was ordered by CBS management to talk to the press on that Monday morning. Surrounded by dozens of scribes and photographers, he answered various questions before dictating a prepared statement.
Now, you must realize that when I left the broadcast last night, I went into dress rehearsal for a play that's opening in 2 days, and I've had almost no sleep, and I know less about this than you do. I haven't read the papers, except I am terribly shocked by the effect it's had. I do not believe that the method is original with me or peculiar to the Mercury Theatre's presentation.
Do you think there ought to be a law against such enactments as we had last night as a result of that?
I don't know what the legislation would be. I know that almost everybody in radio would do almost anything to avert the kind of thing that has happened, myself included, but I don't know what the legislation would be. Radio is new and we are learning about the effect it has on people. A story, the fine H.G. Wells classic fantasy, the original for so many succeeding comic strips and adventure stories and novels, about a mythical invasion by monsters from the planet Mars should have had so profound an effect upon radio listeners.
In his later years, Orson Welles was perhaps best remembered as the writer, director, and star of the movie masterpiece Citizen Kane. But any interview with Orson eventually touched on the performance that made him famous. Even in his 60s, Welles was always eager to share a story about the radio broadcast.
There are pictures of me made that about 3 hours afterwards, looking as much as I could like an early Christian saint. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm afraid that I'm not as hypocritical as anybody could possibly get. We expected a lunatic fringe, but we didn't know it would go all the way across the country, you know. I had friends who, ran out. One of my favorites was Jack Barrymore, who had a kennel of Great Dane dogs. And when he heard it, he went out and undid all the kennels and said, "Fend for yourselves," If you read the newspapers the next day, you would have thought that I was Judas Iscariot and that my life was over. But then in the newspapers, we began to discover individual voices, like Dorothy Thompson, who wrote articles saying, "This is wonderful, it's very funny." And it turned out that the mood of the country was that mood, that people in general, the great majority of people, thought it was terribly funny. Although that night there were a lot of people on the phone and the radio station who were saying to me, "Our wives are over at the church on their knees, and you think you're funny," and so on like that.
Whether on page, on the air, or on screen, the story of Martians invading Earth has been entertaining and frightening people for more than 100 years. Playing on our fear of the unknown and our fascination with outer space, The War of the Worlds has become synonymous with spaceships, death rays, fear, and the two men who made it all seem real, H.G. Wells and Orson Welles.